Hello everyone and welcome to week 7 of the program. We're back again and I hope you guys taking care and taking the proper measurements related to COVID-19. We have been trying to uh, yeah give you some info and update you from our side. Please, if you have something nice to share, also share in the chat. So this week we're gonna talk about designing for community and project sustainability. And bear with us because it's going to be about the history of open source and what has worked and what we can learn from that. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting uh, slide. So where are we on week 7? We have been doing a lot. Briefly I'm going to talk about it, but the goal of this week is to understand the different experience in open source governance and management models. And yeah, we have been doing a lot of things. You have been doing all these test cards and using the boards and trying to engage with people and giving you feedback on your project and refining your ideas, your proposals, and your channels and all the stuff. So you probably are overwhelmed as we are. Preparing this program has been a challenge, but still, just stay with us. Uh, the whole idea is still that we are expanding on this key set of modules, and um, the program has been all about working out these different components. So this component is the one that we're going to be talking about today the most, and is the focus. So we have been doing all this stuff basically, which is the process that allows us to get to the canvas that we have on the left, and that's also the backbone of the program. So we want to also give you a more detailed menu of today. Yeah, how do we understand these experiences in open source? We want to give you some essential concepts, so some theory, some governance models and approaches, and also nice tools for you to implement these concepts in your context. So, how are open source projects maintained and expanded? So, this is a very little diagram of the book I wrote about the history of open source. But we want to find out what is happening behind this phenomenon, what is actually gearing it, and where is it going to. So the most important thing in open source projects is people and community, especially those that make your project and team awesome. So it's all about people and how they engage and self-organize, and we're going to be talking all the time about this today. So money is a means to capture value, to buy labor time, and it's an exchange, a transaction. But a key resource, especially in open source, is the persons that participate. Of course, we also need bills of materials. We also need some funding to pay for like boards and 3D printers, but they are becoming cheaper and cheaper, and that is not being anymore the main problem. The main problem is trying to find the time and the talent that you want to put in your project to get your project to be successful. So yeah, stay with this idea of exchange and transaction and value, and let's talk a bit more about it. So people, when I talk about people, I talk also about people's time, and the time that you, your team, and your community has to participate in the project varies. But the core team needs to have definitely some time to make the project successful. So we're going to be talking first about consolidating a core team. Some of you already probably say, okay, I already have a core team, but yeah, maybe we can expand and give you some insights on that one. So I want to talk. So these are examples of successful open source people. So Richard Stallman, the founder of free software. Limor Fried, she's a hardware geek girl, amazing. You have Linus Torvalds, Joseph Prussia, the Arduino, the creator of Python, and also Preston Werner, who is one of the founders of GitHub, because even though it's not open hardware, it's thanks to GitHub that we can do all the amazing things we can do today. And of course, the creator of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. So, an interesting question is, what do these all people have in common? How have they been able to go from a very basic idea, or a very focused idea, into something that impacts the entire world? And we want to bring again to the concept that all of them are kind of a lead user, or a person that envisions a product and can also implement it and organize a community around it. So the first step in all this let's say initiatives has been always having a core, at least one person, but of course there can be more persons that contribute substantially to the project and make the project like advance in big steps or leaps, right? And there's a lot of study about it, so this is not just something that I'm coming up with, but it's people are really studying these things for years. So I'm gonna briefly read this. Yes, perhaps the most successful open source projects start with relatively small actions that end up having huge impact. Very often those who make improvements are users with a vision of the product they would like to have. Very often they also have a capacity to take this first step. And I guess we have projects in the program that are like this. We know this from Auto DIY, also from UT2. I forgot the name of the blocks for optics. But I see that these projects are persons that really know what they're doing, because they are users, or they are developing a product that they would like to use. So this is also something nice that I wanted to put, because it's part of bringing together a core team, and the reference of the book I put it here. But the first question when you are working on something is, do you believe in it? So it's something you really are passionate about. If then, don't do it if you don't. Does the project fit your hashtag? So I would say your identity, your visions, your interests. If it doesn't fit it, then don't do it. Otherwise, do it. Would you need to use the product yourself? So in many cases, if you are the user of what you're developing, that is a plus. So you are in a right path, because you really understand the context that you're working for. Do you have time to commit? This is very important, because you might have all this, but do you have enough time to bring the project forward? Because that is the main thing we have been discussing about the value source today. The main value source is the people, and of course people implies the time that they can work in the project. Can you do it yourself? If you can do it, or you can do it together with other people and you can lead it, that is great. Is there an audience that can benefit from it? And of course you know already this because you have done it, but also this one is important. It's more personal. Is it fun? Are you gonna have fun? Do you have enough drive and let's say incentive to face all the obstacles of doing this kind of projects? Then if you are gonna have fun because you have a nice team, or you're enjoying what you're doing, then definitely go for it. So think about all this stuff, which is, I think, essential to have a core team. If you don't have a core team, then you cannot build anything. So another interesting thing, which is from the same book, is for teamwork, you want to consider, okay, there are people that have the same mindset. I have a typo here, or different mindset, doing the same or doing different things, and says, okay, people with different mindset do different things, try to avoid that. People with the same mindset doing the same thing, maybe not, because you cannot actually divide tasks, and you will step on each other's toes. So this is a diagram. There was also a very nice diagram from the book, but I was not able to find it, so I recommend the book in general because it's really nice. But from these main ideas, I want to talk now about expanding the core and conquering the world. So, we all think in bigger terms. Oh, I want this project to be really big and I want to do all this and that. And we immediately jump into thinking about conquering the world without even working out the previous part of consolidating a core team. So I wanted to talk more about, more complex organizational issues. This Elinor Ostrom, and she's a Nobel Prize in economics, and I bring her here and in the book as well because open source is an economic model as well. It's a different way of value exchange, if you like. And she has a very nice say that says, organizing is a process and organization is the result of that process. So when we look at the nice open source projects, you always look at the end result, the organization. Oh wow, look at this documentation, how well it's done, how nice it's done. But sometimes we don't actually understand what is the organizing process that creates this level of organization. So she has nice 8 principles for managing a commons. So a commons can be your source code or your code base. It's basically a shared resource that is publicly available. And she has like 8 principles which are very famous. She has studied this in all kinds of contexts. But she says, define clear boundaries, match rules governing use of common goods to local needs and conditions. So basically, consider your context and design for your context. Ensure that those affected by the rules can participate in modifying the rules. So I'm talking about here, for instance, your contributors, the people that work in the source code or in the source files. Make sure the rule-making rights of community members are respected by outside authorities. Okay. Develop a system carried out by community members for monitoring members' behavior. So there are several things that she's talking about that actually many things are managed, especially in code, by Git and pull requests and all these kind of things. So the open source community has a specific way of dealing with this that is very interesting. And I wanted to also point you to Eric von Hippel, who has been a scholar on the topic. The topic has been very studied, so I encourage you to just go and see the video and understand the economics and drivers behind open source, because there's something very nice to take from there, and maybe you can share with us later. There is also one that is about the classical open source model. So this guy is a kernel contributor, so he's part of the Linux team. So you should check it out. And it basically explores the selfish origins of free and open source and dissect the co-option power it has to form broad and deep communities from what apparently simple transactional engagement. So I was actually in this talk in FOSDEM, and it was very, very enlightening. When he says selfish, I would say personally motivated, because you do things also that you are interested in doing for yourself because you are being part of a group. And he was kind of talking about this as well, right? So I recommend you to watch this one. And this one is also very nice. I also was in this talk. He's member of the Olimex company, which is a very successful company that sells open source hardware for industrial use. And they have been doing Linux computers, so this is a huge reference in the context of open hardware. I also put the video there. Yeah, if I didn't put the video, I should put the link somewhere. So I will check that again in the slides, but I'm gonna put the videos in the slides. So you should also look at this, because he's talking about how he deals with customers, with clients, why he choose to publish designs early stage, and how he deals with all the risks that people say is risky, and he says no, it's not risky because it's a win-win for the client and the company. So I also suggest you to watch this one. And finally, with regard to references, I also wanted to mention Michele Bauwens, who is the founder of the P2P Foundation. and he also has a lot of insights. He has been studied cooperatives and how open source has disrupted the economy. So he's a source of inspiration for this course for sure. And he actually pointed me to Elinor Ostrom, and he said, "Hey, you know, Jose, you should have you should put in your book the Elinor Ostrom because it's a key figure in the context of the commons." I wanted to also share this because it's more also giving you core concepts. Peer-to-peer is an abbreviation. P2P is an abbreviation of peer-to-peer, sometimes also described as person-to-person or people-to-people. And the essence of P2P is the direct relationship, and its core characteristics include creation of common goods through open participatory production and governance processes. So this happens a lot in Wikimedia, in open source, in digital commons, and universal access, which is something that we're doing together because you want to do your project open. So you are in a right path to enable peer-to-peer community building. So how have open source projects have been maintained and expanded? I wanted to answer this question because this is the original question of the presentation. And first, again, we emphasize that you need to work out this, and there is no template. There is only, let's say, things you can do to find that out in your own context. But also, I want to have some key takeaways. This is like a checklist that you need to have in order to maintain your project. You need to have a deep understanding of the problems, the domain, and the context you're working for. So I mean also local, regional, and global. So this implies if there's funding in your context, or if there is a fab lab around your project, or if you're working in a university. So understanding where you're sitting or putting your project is really important. But that's not enough. You also need to have a good solution, or a good path to a solution, a solid value proposition. You need to also have a good organization and organizing process around it. So you can have a nice value proposition, but if you don't have this, then you might fail. You need to, of course, provide universal access to the source and the project. I'm not saying just to dump it in GitHub. I'm saying also to enable access to people that don't have, for instance, internet literacy, or they are not very experienced with GitHub. Another thing is that working for and with communities of technology adopters is important. So you need to also reach out those people proactively once you have all this, right? You don't want to reach out people if you don't have a good solution, and you have to be responsible and careful with that. And you want to facilitate peer-to-peer transactions, value exchange. So let's say, for instance, you are in a team, a contributor wants to work because he's passionate about a certain topic. You should enable that as much as possible. You should also be clear about how he or she can contribute. And also, I'm talking about connecting to key sponsors that understand your vision. So enable transaction. Let's say, for instance, a company might be interested in supporting open source because they benefit from it, like if you will see the example of Olimex. Or what? I cannot see the one that is below. Well, let's see. Or creating strategic alliances, maybe with a university. Maybe the university is interested in doing open source because it's publicly funded, and some professors or some actors say, yeah, public funding should be used to create public good. So that's another example. So here are some tools and suggestions. Again, the basic tools: use the issues to create channels, and use the wiki if you don't have a website. We gave you the source of this last week, but we are repeating this again. And I also put this, right? If you have a core team, and you have a solid project, then consider the following tools we're giving, right? Think about, maybe there is an interesting approach to funding, which is a cooperative funding, where, for instance, you might have a team in GitHub, and you can link it to a PayPal, and each person and the community can manage the funding based on the contributions, and it's very similar to Open Collective. So I really like LiberaPy because it's very transparent and it's also open source, and it's also very effective. But I've never worked with Open Collective or used Open Collective, so maybe other guys in your community know about it. Ask about it and give us feedback as well. Incorporate in your team technology evangelist people at demo and show the tool. So it's not enough to have the documentation. You might also, once you have a nice product, you might also want to have a contributor that makes a video or a review of your project. Some influencer that say, hey, you know, I saw this project and I found that it was cool. So people that also might make webinars for instance, universities, people that can adopt or sponsor your project. That's something you can do also. And we also give you the same advanced tools that we gave you yesterday, documentation tools like static site generators. We're going to talk later even more in the program. Newsletters and blogs. Julie is very good at this, and social media. I'm really terrible with social media and newsletters and blogs. I can help with this. So if you have questions about these things, you should also ask in the chat. And yeah, we are here to help you on that one. So if you don't have yet a core solid value proposition, and then you have to be responsible with that, what does it mean to have a good one? Well, the program is about that, so you will find out. But then you basically assemble a core team of talented. So these are the arguments of the function: talented, nice. They have time as well, because you need to have people that have time, and it has to be fun. You have to validate assumptions, hypotheses, intuition, ideas. It's not enough to have the good idea. You need to work it out. And launch a first release of an MVP. This is something that, for instance, Auto DIY has done already, and he has a very nice website. He's really advanced, so he could even give some tips on that if he would like to. Yeah. So the week 7 assignments are very simple. Watch this video. So for people that haven't watched the video, I put it in the slides. See at least one of the videos we have compiled for you in the slides, and reflect on what we have talked about today, and share your insights, reflections, and questions in this issue. So if you go to this issue here, you will immediately be taken to this page where I ask you some questions, and it would be great if you guys can give us some reflections and insights on on your takes on this content. And finally, yeah, we want to thank you again, and we want to hope for the best wherever you are. We understand the situation, but we also want to give you hope to keep doing what you're doing and taking the proper measurements, because it's the best thing to do, to be calm and keep focused. So all the best for you in this week, and take care. See you soon.